God here, and welcome to the Gods of Odds, hosted by two of my favorites, Brad Hoiseth and Dave Dabbah.
Welcome to the Gods of Odds. It is week number 12 of your National Football League season. That is Brad Hoiseth over there in beautiful Southern California. I am Dave Dabbah up here in Northern California. We are absolutely excited to do this week's show. We are actually, Brad, recording this show before Thursday, which is, I think, maybe an absolute, record for us. I know there was a lot going on in the National Football League last week. Honestly, when we go back and look at last week, you can basically tell that there weren't really too many surprises in the National Football League, except for the fact, Brad, that my Dallas Cowboys to the Super Bowl pick is still alive and well. That, and of course, one of our listeners actually picked the Rams in their game against Tampa, and that would have been the other big surprise last week. I've got to ask you, Hoiseth,
yes.
How bad did Tom Brady look last week?
Yeah, I mean, Tom Brady, the Rams have got a really good defense. And he's struggled against the better defenses this year, in particular the ones that could put pressure on him and cover people downfield. And, you mentioned it at the beginning of the year that a lot of it was going to depend on if he could throw the ball downfield. You get all those nice big targets with Godwin and with, Mike Evans and now Antonio Brown. But it didn't really appear as if he had the time or the arm strength to get it deep, and I don't know which of it was, but it seemed as if he had a lot of pressure on him most of the game, and I don't think it's really the kind of game that he's used to running, at least when he was in New England anyways. It was more of a precise, short passing game that he ran with the Patriots for years and years, and now they're asking him to do something that's a little bit different, and I think they got some problems in Tampa. I'm not quite sure Bruce Arians is the guy that's going to get him over the top. I even heard some comments from Arians that were a little out of character for something Tom Brady's ever been used to. Being in New England, things are so buttoned up that, you just never really heard the conversations behind the scene. And Bruce Arians made some sort of comment earlier this week to the effect of, Tom's not doing this well or he's not doing that well. And Tom Brady's not used to that kind of stuff. I mean, with Bill Belichick, things were, as I said, really buttoned up. Things never got out in the media. And I would imagine that Tom's not very happy about that.
Yeah, and if you look at the Patriots record on the other side, sometimes couples just shouldn't get divorced, Brad. That's sort of what it comes down to. I mean, I pretty much guarantee that if Tom Brady was still a member of the Patriots at this point, the Patriots would be actually winning their division. And now and we're going to cover this game a little bit later in the show, and I'm super excited to do it because it's so unbelievable to me that the Patriots are a 2.5-point favorite at home against the Cardinals. Yeah, that's absolutely something that would have never happened during the Tom Brady era there in New England for sure. So I think Arians is a mess. I know we're also going to cover the Kansas City Chiefs Tampa game extensively on the big show today. But what's interesting, as we sort of look forward to that game, I mean, if Tampa loses, they're going to be 6-5 with, and if Arizona win, I mean, Tampa could actually miss the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers are actually, I've got the NFL standings right in front of me. The Bucs are right now 7-4. So if they were to drop to 7-5 and the Saints were to win again, I mean, I think they could, having already lost twice to the Saints, their opportunities to win the NFC South would be, few and far between. But, I still think they're okay. Their defense is still really good. They've got a lot of weapons on offense. And I just think there's a lot there with Bruce Arians that, that they barely even attempted to run the ball last week. Yeah. And they actually have a good running game when they use it. And somebody needs to explain to me why Leonard Fournette's on the field before Ronald Jones. I'm sorry, I just don't understand that. I think Ronald Jones is a pretty talented kid. He was on the field for maybe 30% of the plays last week. And I don't know if he got into Arians' doghouse or what happened, but they barely even attempted to run the football. And that is just not Tom Brady football. When they were in New England, people don't realize that they ran the ball a whole lot more than people actually thought they did. If you went back and you look at the yearly numbers of how they ranked in rushing yardage, you never really paid much attention to it because in New England they were always running 4 or 5 different running backs. And so the lead guy on the team would end up 500 or 600 yards at the end of the year. But at the end of the year, when you added them all together, they actually ran the ball pretty well when he was in New England. And they were just very precise with that short, crisp passing game. But for some reason, Arians, he's got all those weapons on the outside. He's kind of a flashy guy. I just kind of wonder who's going to win that war of messages at the end of the year. Is Bruce Arians going to be gone if they don't make the playoffs, or they don't go very far in the playoffs, or will Tom Brady decide he's going to call it a day?
Yeah, yeah. It's hard to tell where this is all playing out. I can tell you right now that it's weird to me where the Colts actually look like they're playing a little bit better with their super aging quarterback than Tampa does. Tampa's just really inconsistent at this point. I guess they're still in pretty good position to make the playoffs, but a loss to the Chiefs this weekend, things are going to get really interesting. Unfortunately for those Minnesota Viking fans out there, their odds of actually threatening to make the playoffs got washed away by Dave Dabbah. I'm speaking third person now, Brad. by my Super Bowl pick of the Dallas Cowboys. Look, I did not say anything about the Cowboys having to win the division with more than 9 wins. I just said, I think they're going to win the division. And Brad, I still hold to that very thin possibility. But, I mean, they're basically tied for first now. And that entire division, and I've said this before, and then we'll dive into the picks here in a sec, but that entire division needs to be put on relegation watch, which is something that the National Football League actually absolutely needs to start to consider, I think, as we move forward.
I still think, and I said it a couple of weeks ago, I think the Giants are the best team in that division. As long as Daniel Jones is not turning the ball over, they have a very talented defense. They have a couple of weapons at wide receiver. Their running game isn't bad. It doesn't appear as if Joe Judge has lost them at all. They've kept a lot of games close. I still think the Giants are going to win that thing, but who knows? There's 4 teams there. They're all separated by half a game or less.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to go. Hey, there's another thing. First of all, we got the Heater app. We're going to get that out in a little bit. But I went 7-3 last week there, Mr. Dabbah. That was pretty fun, right?
Yeah, so Brad had a tremendous week. He went 7-3, as he mentioned last week, which was I think his best week of the season so far. He also has a stellar. I think he's like 8-1 on Minnesota Viking picks for some strange, bizarre reason. We're not really sure what that's all about. So if you're stay tuned for the Viking pick. It's almost sure cash for you if you follow what Brad's going to say about that Panther Viking game a little bit later in the show. But Brad, I got a special thing for you this week. So we were putting together the graphics package for this week's show, and so you won't know this till you see the video. But we have decided for this week to honor the performance of Jared Goff last week and have him be the cover art of this week's Gods of Odds show. Now, here's the deal. It has been literally, I think, really two 2 weeks. I think we went almost 2 whole weeks of the National Football League season without me getting a real Jared Goff is terrible comment from Brad Hoiseth. Though he did send me a Goff is like Cousins, is like Cousins thing. And then they went on to win the game. So, other than that, I thought, what can I do for Brad this week to help sort of motivate him and fire him up? And I was like, let's get Goff on the cover art for this week's Gods of Odds show.
He did everything he possibly could to try to give that game away last week. And Tom Brady kept matching him, interception for interception. So that he got away with it. But I wouldn't call it a stellar performance. But you know what? He looked good for the first half.
Yeah.
But that's always the problem with Jared Goff. He looks great for 2 quarters, and the other 2 are a complete mystery. And
So he failed worse, or he failed less worse than the other guy.
Exactly.
Is really what it comes down to. All right, we are going to dive into our top 10 games in the National Football League for week number 12 that we believe are worth actually spending a couple dollars on. Mr. Hoiseth, the floor is yours.
All right, well, the first game I have is New Orleans at Denver. The Saints are a -6. I still have a lot of questions on New Orleans moving forward without Drew Brees, which I don't know if you saw it, but they're saying he's got 11 cracked ribs and a collapsed lung. I mean, they're saying he could be back in a couple of weeks. I don't understand that at all.
Yeah,
that sounds pretty serious to me when you start talking about cracked ribs. I don't know, but I watched that game last week against Atlanta for New Orleans, and the difference is pretty large when you're talking about Atlanta and Denver defensively. Denver's really good. I've been saying that all year long. I've been hitting that thing. They finally proved me right last week. And I think the Broncos are going to pose a big challenge for Taysom Hill, and that offense was very funky last week against the Falcons. I know it looked better at the end of the game. The score was a little lopsided. This is not the Atlanta Falcons defense. This is the Denver Broncos defense. And that nonsense they were running with Taysom Hill is just not going to work against it. And so I think Denver's riding high after their win last week. I think they're playing decent football. I still think they're a better team than their record. The Saints are going on the road and giving 6. I think it's all likely that New Orleans will win the game, but I think 6 is a big line playing in Denver against the Broncos in the high altitude. So I'm going to take the Broncos in the 6 points.
Yeah, I think what we have here, with Taysom Hill is a little bit of Mitch Trubisky trickery. It's like you can make Mitch look good for half a season by running a bunch of play option plays for him, and sort of just a bunch of trick plays to make the Bears actually look good. And I see sort of something sort of similar with Taysom Hill as well. I'm just not a buyer in any way of this Denver Bronco team the way you are. And I've been that way, for the most part all season. And I know, like, if there's going to be a game on our list that includes the Broncos, there's a good chance that Brad is going to go all old school on defense. Oh, defense this, defense that. Look, the Saints, barring a blizzard, are going to go in with Alvin Kamara, that fantastic group of wide receivers, Taysom Hill, and they're going to basically destroy the Denver Broncos. Look, I still don't believe in Drew Luck. I'm going to need more from him before I will. For those reasons and many more, I'm going to go ahead and take the Saints in this one.
Well, I do agree with you on Locke. I don't think he's anything special at quarterback. But I think it's a very, very different game than the one the Saints saw last week with that offense. The Broncos can run the ball a little bit. And they do have some weapons out there. Noah Fant is starting to get healthy. Tim Patrick is a good football player. They got a young Jerry Jeudy. And I love their running backs. Philip Lindsay is a really good football player. Those are all things that Atlanta couldn't do last week with a banged-up Julio Jones and a turnover-prone Matt Ryan. Yeah. And so I just think it turns into more of a muck and grind game. and I think Denver's pretty good at muck and grind football. And so I thought the 6 was a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if New Orleans won it, but I've got to go with the Broncos at home with the better. There's an old theory in betting: if you get a better team, or if you got a team with a better defense playing at home and you're getting points, you should always take that. And so that's the theory I'm going with.
There we go. The gambling book of the Bible of the gambling book right there. That really is a good theory. We'll just have to see. I'm actually really looking forward to watching that game. It's one of the games, I'm planning on using multiple devices to watch all at the same time. So a couple weeks ago, Brad, we had a game, and I said, this it's hard for me to believe this team's only favored by like 3.5 points. And so while I was doing the pick, you stopped me sort of like halfway through to say it was actually 13. And I said, I don't care. I'm still picking him. So the first pick that I have coming off of my top 5 is the Raiders at the Falcons. And, you really only have to give up 3.5 to take the Raiders on the road against this Atlanta Falcons team. And I saw this and I was like, okay. And then I went back and I looked at the odds like a couple hours later just to make sure I wasn't going to make that same mistake again. And it is actually truly just 3.5 points. Look, I have not seen the national media jump on a team that's lost and praise them as much as the national media did with the way the Raiders played against the Chiefs this past week. I think, Derek Carr has really come into his own. This is a, really strong football team in most of the phases of the game. Their secondary is definitely improving dramatically. I've a lot of times ignore you when you start talking about how bad Matt Ryan is. And I've come around to believe that you're correct about that. While I disagree with you about the Broncos defense and all that stuff, I think you're absolutely right about how bad Matt Ryan has become. And I think this Raider defense is going to be extraordinarily aggressive coming into this game. And there's just no way I see the Raiders laying an egg after what they did and almost accomplished in Las Vegas over the weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. I think the Raiders are the easy pick here. I think they got a lot more at stake that they're playing for than the Falcons do. Atlanta looked pretty bad last weekend against the Saints, and the Raiders don't have as good a defense as the Saints, so I expect a really high-scoring game here. I think I saw the over-under was somewhere around 57 or something like that. It was a crazy number. But the Raiders, like I said, I think they're a better football team than Atlanta right now, and Atlanta doesn't have a lot to play for. Matt Ryan is, he's kind of the model of inconsistency. He'll look good for a couple of quarters, and then you wonder where he's throwing the ball at times. And so I'm with you there. I'm going to take the Raiders. I'll give those points on the road. I think they're the better football team. Derek Carr's having a really good season, and he ought to be able to pick that Falcon defense apart.
Yeah. I was looking at your picks from last week, Brad, and I was like, if I had just agreed with you on everything, I would have been 7-3 as well.
You would have.
I would have been 7-3. All right, what's your next game?
All right, well, I got a really stunner of a game here, one that could be for first place. That's the New York Giants at the Cincinnati Bengals. And by first place, I mean the Giants in the NFC, obviously. They go on the road to Cincinnati. They're a 6-point favorite, are the Giants. And I look at Cincinnati now. They don't have Joe Burrow. They don't have Joe Mixon. It doesn't look like Giovanni Bernard's going to play. They got all kinds of problems on the offensive line. And, what's the hangover going to look like in Cincinnati now that Joe Burrow's hurt? And I just think the Giants have got a lot to play for. I think their defense is really solid. And I think they're going to go in there and easily get a win in Cincinnati on Thanksgiving weekend. So I'll take the Giants, and I'll give up the 6.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. There's probably not too much of a reason to spend too much time on this one. Other than to say, I was impressed that Joe Burrow lasted as long as he did this season. We had, you remember, Brad, earlier in the year, we had that whole trauma unit set up and ready for him at the local Cincinnati hospital because he was just getting destroyed. And so, we certainly don't wish injury on anybody, but that, Cincinnati offensive line was just, it was you couldn't even call it a line. You could call it, maybe a fence. It's just full of holes, everywhere. So it didn't, sort of surprise me. Now, we're sitting here at this point, with the Giants, who are, as you mentioned, a half game out of first place, as is the rest of the division, Giants, Cowboys, and Washington, who are behind the Eagles by a half game because the Eagles actually tied a football game somewhere along the lines. I just look at this, and of all of these teams, outside of sort of my silliness of trying to stick to my Cowboys winning the Super Bowl pick, but I'm going to go down with that ship all the way, Brad, all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. Well, I will go down to where the Titanic is with that until the Cowboys are no longer allowed into the playoffs. That being said, this Giants team, of all the teams in this division, have been playing the best in the last couple weeks. I agree with you. I think they're going to take down the Bengals pretty easily in this one.
Yeah, at some point, with the Bengals, you just got to wonder when does the whole dam break loose and things just start falling apart. 'Cause I think they actually looked like a better football team for, most of the games they've played. I mean, they've been in a handful of games, even though they haven't won a lot of games. But then losing Burrow, and I just think really has got to be deflating to them. I'm not sure exactly what happened with Joe Mixon. The guy hurt his foot about 4 or 5 weeks ago. Hasn't been able to get on the field. Now they're saying that it could be a season-ending injury. Giovanni Bernard is dinged up. I still think it's really going south for the Bengals here at the end of the season.
Yeah. Okay, so the next game on the docket, Mr. Hoiseth. Oh my God, I'm so excited about this. This is Anthony Lynn at the Buffalo Bills. And if you're gonna take Anthony Lynn and his Los Angeles Chargers, you've got to you're gonna. Buffalo's got. If you're gonna take Buffalo, you got to give up 5.5 points in this game. I look at this and I'm like, I don't know how anybody in their right mind could take the Chargers in this game. I mean, the Chargers barely held off the absolutely pathetic New York Football Jets last week at home. I love Justin Herbert more than probably just about anybody. You were right, Brad, last week. That haircut was horrific, absolutely horrific. We put it up. We put a picture of it up. The media was all over it. Even into the Monday recap shows this week. I don't see this Los Angeles Chargers team sort of traveling well all the way to Buffalo, dealing with what could be some weather issues in Buffalo and taking down the Bills. I'm happy to give up the 5.5 points. I think anybody that goes with the Chargers is crazy to take the Chargers in this one.
Well, then call me crazy, Dave, because I do believe the Bills will win the game. But I think it's just another one of those. I think the Chargers are probably the best 3-win team in football. I know that doesn't mean much, but they've been in almost every single game this year and managed to find a lot of ways to lose football games. And I think they'll be in this football game as well. You got two of the better young quarterbacks in the league. They're very similar in the way they play the game. They both have, elite arm strength. They both can run a little bit. They look very much alike, actually, as players. And the Bills don't get enough stops to really blow anybody out. They don't have a good enough running game to salt the game away. They keep way too many games close. The Chargers are great at keeping games close and losing them. So 5.5 points on the road. I'm going to take the Chargers, and I'll take that 5.5 points.
Yeah. Brad brings up a lot of really, in all seriousness, brings up a lot of really good points. You know, the big concern I would have and continue to have about the Buffalo Bills' future this season, you know, especially when we get into the playoffs, is their complete lack of a running game. And the fact that they week in and week out are not addressing it. Look, there's a lot of decent, you know, sort of free agent running backs on the market. They have to make some sort of move to go pick somebody up. Look, I just look at this Bills team and think it's going nowhere because they have no running game at all. And you're absolutely right, Brad. They can't salt anything away, as you said, in any way. You know, that being said, you know, this is Anthony Lynn. This is the Chargers flying across country. This is, you know, potential bad weather. This is a Buffalo win all the way, and I think it's a win by a touchdown, which is why I'm sticking with my Bills pick. You have not convinced me fully yet, Brad.
Well, another side note on that before I get to my next game is I think the Chargers are getting Austin Eckler back this week, and I think that's something they've been missing for a long, long time. I'm not a big believer in the other running backs the Chargers have been playing, but I think Eckler, you know, he adds a different element to that offense. And if they get him back, you know, who knows how healthy he's going to be. He's coming back from a pretty bad hamstring injury. We'll just have to wait and see how that plays out. Okay, so I'm going to go to my number 3 game, and it's Carolina at Minnesota. And as Dave announced, I'm 8-1 on the season on Vikings games. I don't know how. Sometimes you just flip a coin and you get it right. But this is an interesting game right here because, you know, you got Teddy Bridgewater coming home to play in Minnesota against Kirk Cousins, and it's now his team. You know, there's not going to be any Christian McCaffrey in this game. He's not going to play. I think they've already announced that. And so you got the Vikings coming off you know, the interesting about the Vikings game is usually when they've lost this year, they've looked really bad. I didn't think the Vikings looked that bad. I just thought the Cowboys kind of outplayed them for a lot of that game. And you could tell the Cowboys, I think, just wanted it more. And we found out at the end of the game, once again, as if we needed any more proof, that Kirk Cousins is not the kind of guy that can lead a team on the last drive touchdown to win a game. It was all set up for him. What, they have 1:45 when they took over the ball, something like that? And so when it comes to this game, I think that not only Kirk Cousins, but also the coaching staff in Minnesota wants to make a point that they made the right decision in going with Kirk Cousins. And so I see the Vikings coming out. I see them playing really hard and winning this game. The line is 4. I am going to take the Vikings. I'm going to give up the 4 points in that game. I think they have more to play for. I think there's a lot of angst, and there's a lot of, you know, anxiousness surrounding the coaching staff there in Minnesota and Kirk Cousins as to whether or not the Vikings made the right choice a couple of years ago when they got rid of Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah. You know, everything you said is right. 8-1 against the Vikings. I'm not going to pick against Brad Hoiseth this week at all. I don't think anybody else should either. You know, the Teddy Bridgewater comes home thing isn't about Teddy Bridgewater coming home. It's about, did the Vikings organization make the right decision, as Brad just pointed out. So there is, you know, sort of extra motivation to get it done. You know, maybe the Vikings need to learn something from Coach Vrabel and have their entire team, you know, just sit there at the 50-yard line when the game before the start of the game comes out. Look, you know, the Vikes have, you know, still have a real outside chance of making the playoffs. The Carolina Panthers are, you know, basically 12 months ahead of schedule for Matt Rule and that organization, playing way better than, you know, anybody thought. I mean, you know, they're not playing great every week, but for the most part, that team is playing really tough. This game actually scares me because of how well Carolina sort of played. You know, I think last week they shut out a certain person's favorite team coming into this week, which was I think, Brad, the Detroit Lions. and did you pick the Lions to win the division?
At some point, I did.
At some point, you did. Now, I mentioned this a couple times. Look, the Cowboys they still have a chance. Whereas the odds of the Lions winning or making the playoffs right now is just not that good. So, I think Carolina is a scary team for me for a variety of reasons. But I'll agree with you and go with the Vikes in this one.
Quick question for you. I know that they added and made it 8 teams making the playoffs this year for each conference. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so how's that going to work? Is each team that wins their division then automatically guaranteed? Then they're going 4 wild cards or what?
Yeah, I think it's there's just one team with a bye. Was how they set it up. So I think it's 7 teams in each. There's one extra team that's in the playoffs, not 2 in each. In the AFC and the NFC.
Okay, I was under the impression that it was 8, but if you're telling me it's 7, I'll believe you. If it had been 8, I was thinking, the Vikings and the Lions are both tied at 4 and 6. It's not out of the,
Yeah.
It's the Bears are 5 and 5. I guess they would essentially be in the playoffs right now, or maybe they'd be 1 game out of it. But at least this thing is not over with yet. There's still a lot of football to be played. There's a lot of guys that are going to get nicked up and dinged up before the end of the season. I think if the Vikings keep their heads screwed on straight, they've been playing better football in here over the last month and a half. They kind of let one get away from them. This is a game they should be able to win against Carolina, who's 4 and 7. 2 similar teams. I think the team that loses is probably on the outside looking in terms of the playoffs. So.
Yeah. I think no matter what, if the Vikes lose, they're definitely where they belong. On the outside looking in. If they win, then they've still got an outside chance of. I think they'd have to catch. Arizona to take over that final spot. All right, moving on off of the Vikes onto the one of Brad Hoiseth's favorite teams of all time. His love affair with the Philadelphia Eagles continues. As we have, I try to get Brad stuff every week when I can. So I've got the Seahawks at the Eagles. If you take the Eagles, you get 5 points. And I look at this game and I think that Russell Wilson's sort of issues that he had for a couple weeks, throwing a lot of picks, is sort of over at this point. I know their defense isn't that good. I think we all know that at this point. But, gosh, how good is Carson Wentz? Like, is Carson Wentz really going to pick apart any defense this year in the National Football League? I mean, that is, really the big question at hand. So I look at this game and I think Seattle's getting a little bit more healthy on the offensive side of the ball. They're starting to get more of their running backs back. And I think this is an important game. I think Seattle, the organization as a whole, feels like it's got a chance to just win this division outright. And they're not going to take the Eagles lightly at all. Seattle continues to be one of the best run National Football League teams, and they're always able to deal with inefficiencies on one side of the ball, the other with the other side of the ball. So I think for sure the Seahawks are going to win this, and I'm happy to give up the points.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the other side of the fence with you on this one.
Oh my God, you're taking Carson Wentz to win a game, Brad?
I am.
Jeez.
Yeah, I am, and I'll tell you why. Because I think that the Eagles have actually got a pretty good defense, and I know that the Seattle Seahawks have the worst defense in the league, and so if there's anything you can say about these teams from the NFC East, is that defensively they're not bad, short of the Cowboys. The Eagles play solid defense. The Giants play solid defense. The football team plays solid defense. The problem they run into is on the other side of the ball where they continue to turn it over. I think the best tonic is the Seattle Seahawks defense. And, Carson Wentz has had a tough time this year. He hasn't been able to get a lot of time to throw the ball. doesn't have a tremendous amount of weapons on the outside when he does. But Seattle is about as poor as a defense can get in the league. And I just looked at it as going on the road. Seattle also gets a ton of calls when they're at home. They're not nearly as effective on the road. And so they're one of the teams, I think I mentioned it in the Brad's Baker's dozen, that, short of the Packers, I think the Seahawks probably get more calls than anybody at home. But now they're going on the road to Philadelphia. It's a big game. I think Doug Peterson's a heck of a football coach. And you're playing the first place Philadelphia Eagles there, Mr. Dabbah. They're not going to go down so lightly. I think it's in all likelihood that Seattle could win the game. I think they will win the game. But if you're going to give me 5 at home with the better defense, just like I said earlier, Dave, there's kind of a trend going on tonight. You're going to see it play out throughout the evening. I'm going with the defenses.
Yeah, and it's funny. Last week Brad tried to pawn good defenses off on you, the public, when he said something. He said something to the effect about the New York Jets defense. And
they play hard.
They play hard, right? And he corrected me to tell me that they actually play hard, which he was absolutely right about. And so if you go back and you do look at the Eagles, Brad's right. Like this Eagle defense has played fairly well this year and has sort of held up. I could easily start to make the argument that they get to play the Giants and the Cowboys and the Redskins, and they played teams like the Browns. But at the same time, their offense has been so bad that when you look at, if this defense hasn't held up the way it's held up, they might not even have a win this year. They might just be sitting there, at 0-9-1, with that tie. That's sort of how good this defense has played to this point. So I absolutely agree with Brad. This is going to be an interesting game. I just think at the end of the day, this game means so much more to Seattle than it does to the Eagles, which just sounds strange for another team that's in first place. But I think Doug Peterson he's just in there going, how is this even possible? How is this even possible? There's no way we should even be anywhere remotely making it to the playoffs this year. He's a smart guy. He knows what he has, and he's just got to be, just shaking his head at this point. So, I think there's less pressure on the Eagles in this game, and I think the Seahawks have to, really find a way to get this one done.
I keep thinking that at some point, one of these teams in the NFC East is going to break away from the pack at some point. I don't know who it's going to be. I still think it's going to be the Giants. But you made a really good point when it comes to the Eagle defense and how well they've played. I mean, how many times has Carson Wentz turned the ball over in his own side of the field, and the Eagle defense has had to try to step up, try to stop it? I mean, at some point, you would think that Wentz is going to be able to put 4 quarters together.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking Seattle is. If there's ever a team you're going to put 4 quarters together against, it's got to be the Seahawks.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Is it my turn, Dave?
It is, Brad. Right. You're usually more on top than I am, but it's absolutely your turn.
All right, Tennessee at Indianapolis. That's my number 2 game. It's a good one. It's a big game for both teams. Colts are 3-point favorite at home against the Tennessee Titans. I told you there was a trend going on here tonight. Better defenses at home. I don't think there's any question out there, anybody watching the NFL this year, the Colts are one of the best defenses in the league. And the other thing that I brought up last week that's, man, if you watch the Tennessee versus Baltimore game, Tennessee just cannot get a stop on third down. Phillip Rivers is really good at that kind of stuff. And so I see Indianapolis at home giving up 3. I think it's one of the better games of the week. It's intriguing. But I see Indianapolis winning that game and keeping their hopes alive for the playoffs.
Yeah. This was a game that I was, absolutely going to take the Titans just because of momentum. I referenced the Mike Vrabel, taking his entire team, sticking them on the 50-yard line before the start of the game. And then Harbaugh comes out, to complain about it. And none of his players back him up. like none of them are there. It's just a Harbaugh against the Titans. And then Vrabel comes out, and Vrabel, he sort of blows him off. And, Harbaugh's like, that's just not cool. You shouldn't be doing that. It's disrespectful. It's disrespectful. Well, of course it's disrespectful. But you're not playing freaking badminton. This is football. I mean, it is football. I mean, like, you try to get away with cheating in this game, It's not like you teach it, but if you get away with it, then you do. I mean, like, you run your players up, like you complete a pass, which looks like a pass, but the wide receiver dropped it. As a head coach, the wide receiver dropped it. The ball touched the ground. You still try to run up to you still try to get that play off before the other team can challenge it. It is the National Football League. It is all about being disrespectful, Mr. Harbaugh. So I loved the fact that Vrabel did that, and I thought, he deserved, a little bit of credit. And so I was absolutely going to pick Tennessee in this one. But I've definitely changed my mind on this. Brad, you make some really good points. I think I'm sort of, this is sort of like, for me, the last year of Dan Faust. It's like, every time I get a chance to watch Phillip Rivers play, I'm like totally enjoying it. I joke about how bad his arm strength is, how gravity has taken over. I make all sorts of jokes about how bad Phillip Rivers really is. But it is just so intriguing to watch how he handles a football game at this point. And even at this stage of his career, just not having the arm strength, it looks like every throw is painful. It looks like he's taking out the trash, and the trash bag is so heavy that hefty bag is about to rip. And then he throws the ball, and it looks like he's in pain every single time he throws it. It is so fascinating to watch. This Colts defense, you're absolutely right about these defenses at home. In a game this close, I'm definitely going to go with the Colts in this one as well.
Yeah, and this game's for first place. I mean, both these teams are 7-3. You talked about Harbaugh and the Ravens, and if the playoffs were to start today, they would be a bubble team for the playoffs. I mean, people don't realize that the Ravens are a game behind the Browns.
Yeah.
And so, when you start looking at the playoffs, the top 7 teams are the Steelers, the Chiefs, the Colts, Titans, and Browns are all 7-3. Then you got the Dolphins, and you've got the Bills also at 7-3. So there's so many good teams in the AFC that I got a little critical of John Harbaugh myself this week. I just don't really know if that team really has any identity on offense. I'm watching that game against Tennessee, and like I told you last week, they can't get off the field on third down. In the first half, Lamar Jackson kept completing passes like 3rd and 13. They'd get a first down, and I'm like, oh man, the Titans just cannot get off the field. And then finally, they buttoned things up a little bit in the second half, and Baltimore just couldn't do anything, and just Tennessee just outplayed them from that point forward. And I think Baltimore's got a lot of problems right now. This is a big game for both these teams, the Colts and the Titans. I just think the Colts have an elite defense. They've given up 208 points the entire season in 10 games, and that's not a lot for the NFL.
Yeah.
Short of the Steelers and really the Dolphins in the AFC, they've got one of the best defenses in the entire league.
Yep. They absolutely do. All right, Brad, I think it's my turn to pick. It is my honorary other game of the week for Brad Hoiseth. Jared Goff on the front cover of this week's promos and pictures for the Gods of Odds show for week number 12. And I've got the 49ers going into Los Angeles to play the Rams. The Rams are favored by 7. I'm sure this 49er team is just, as we all know, been totally decimated by injuries multiple times throughout the season. I think there's just nothing left in the tank for Kyle Shanahan to do at this point. They've tried everything to sort of salvage the season. I think it's over at this point for the 49ers. Just way too many injuries. I think the Rams, Goff is going to play well enough The real question is, do you really believe the Rams are going to win by 7? And the answer is absolutely yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I'm going to agree with you on this game. I'm going to go with the Rams. But they played, not that many weeks ago, and San Francisco beat them 24-16. Jared Goff had a terrible day. It was 19 of 38, threw a pick. That's where my hesitation comes in is, I think Goff is just the wild card here. The difference here, though, is that, the Rams defense is playing at a different level right now than they were back then. They've really kicked it into a higher gear, and they're making a lot of plays. They're putting a lot of pressure on quarterbacks. And as you said, San Francisco's just got so many injuries. And the Rams got a lot more to play for. So we're getting to that time of year now where, you don't really need us. Remember last week I said, Pittsburgh's really good and Jacksonville's really bad. That's all you need to know.
Yeah. And
sometimes guys get in and they look at these games and they make too much of the numbers, and they'll tell you, how many teams wearing orange have won on the road on the East Coast at 3:00 in the afternoon, and how they've done against the spread over the last 12 years in a row. And sometimes it's just it's paralysis by analysis. And so I just believe the Rams are playing on a different level right now on defense. They have a lot more to play for, and I'm like you. I will give those 7 points.
Yeah, I tried to get cute with you last week, and I will admit it, with the Jaguars-Steelers game. And I put a note into our spreadsheet with I think it said, what was I thinking? And, I was definitely over analyzing the situation to that point. I did not use color of uniform in my decision-making process last week when talking about when talking about that team, but it absolutely blew me away. All right, Brad, I think we're down to your last pick.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, the gear store. We got some good gear coming out there on the Mighty Rip. Check that out. Get yourself a Gods of Odds t-shirt if you're enjoying the show. One more note I wanted to say on that Tennessee-Indianapolis game, backing up a little bit there, the Colts. We both took the Colts and gave the 3. They just played a few weeks ago, and in the second half, the Colts beat the Titans 21-0. So if you believe in trends, the Colts figured something out in the second half of that game. I believe that also carries through to this week, because that was just a few weeks ago, that game.
Yeah, and I think Vrabel at this point is resorting to motivational tactics to get his team, up for everything. So there's it's sort of hiding the deficiencies that they're sort of having across the board, and you can only go to that that sort of motivational card so much before the lack of talent or scheme really starts to show through.
So my number one game is probably one of the better games of the week. It's the Chiefs at the Buccaneers, and Kansas City is a 3.5-point favorite on the road in Tampa, where they have a better defense. Again, I told you we're going to talk about the trends here, Dave. Here's the thing about Bruce Arians. You got to run the football this weekend. The Chiefs cannot stop the run. If they give the ball to Ronald Jones 20 times, the Buccaneers will win this football game. And, they've got a really good defense. Kansas City obviously has one of the great offenses in the league. The BUCS need this game way more than Kansas City does, especially in light of what happened last week. I'm going to take – I love that extra hook, that 3.5 points. And so – you're going to give me 3.5 at home with the better defense. I'm going to do it every time. I'm going to take the Buccaneers in 3.5.
Yeah. Look. You and I both know what the BUCS have to do. I'm assuming the BUCS organization knows what they have to do.
I'm not assuming that, by the way. I'm not sure Bruce Arians does know what to do to win.
Yeah, who's the offensive coordinator over there? He's a former quarterback.
Byron Leftwich, I want to say.
Yeah, so, they know what they have to do. I think they're so confused about Fournette. I think you were right about that. I think they still think he's a number one running back, and that's, sort of getting in their way. And I'm not sure that, they're going to make the necessary adjustments in this one. I think this is sort of a test for Kansas City. I think they want to keep their blemish of one loss, intact. I look at this and I think that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to come out firing on all cylinders, and I just don't think that Tampa is going to be wise enough to run the ball as much as we both think they need to actually win this game. Look, Tampa is so streaky. I don't know what's happening from week to week. It's a fair assessment. Yes, we all looked at their defense at the start of the year, and we looked at it, 5 weeks in and 10 weeks in, and there's weeks we fall in love with this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, and there's other weeks we just don't, and they are most likely not going to find a way to shut down this Chiefs offense in any way. It's going to be a shootout. I like Kansas City in this one for sure.
Here's an interesting thing for you. I was thinking the Chiefs are having a great offense. They've scored 321 points this year. The Buccaneers have scored 320. So the Bucs can score some points, but the Kansas City does have some deficiencies stopping the run. And so I think if Bruce Arians figures it out, the Buccaneers can come out winning this football game. The Chiefs haven't been tested that much this year. The Raiders gave them a tussle both times they played them. I don't think the Raiders are really anything special when it comes to defense. They certainly don't play the kind of defense that the Buccaneers can play when they're on the top of their game. So, Tom Brady doesn't lose many back-to-back football games. And so the question is, will Tom Brady lose back-to-back football games?
Yeah, it's like Bruce Arians is not Bill Belichick, I think, is the thing that we ultimately are going to conclude. But it is a really interesting game, and I'm with you. It's definitely one of the games I want to watch most of this coming weekend. So the last game we have here in our top 10 games worth spending some money on for week number 12 of your National Football League season is the Cardinals at the Patriots. We referenced it at the start of the show that the Cardinals, how could this happen where the Cardinals are going in to New England so late in the season and actually being favored? Have times changed, Mr. Hoiseth? I think we're past the beginning of the end for the Patriots at this point. I think it's safe to say that and you called this a couple weeks ago that the dynasty was over. And I think it's absolutely safe to say it. I think 10 years from now, when we're doing, Gods of Odds season number 10, Brad, which I'm really looking forward to, because by then, like our studio is just going to be beautiful at that point. And we'll have producers maybe, but at that point, this Patriot team's probably going to be, constantly in the, if you will, the lottery of the National Football League draft year in and year out. This Belichick Brady thing was magic, and I think I'm not sure either of them will really progress without each other, and that's sort of the reality of the situation. This Cardinal team absolutely has to play better. If they want to be a legitimate threat in the playoff picture this year, this is a must win for the Arizona Cardinals. There's times where I'm sold on Kyler, and there's other times where I think he's, nice but not great. And I think that's where I fall with Kyler. I think I fall sort of in the he's currently a slightly above average quarterback in the National Football League. He does, some things that nobody else can do. But some of the things that everybody else can do, he doesn't do as well. So, I just think he's a nice quarterback, sort of playing a little bit above average. I'm going to go with the Cardinals in this one just because it's that much more important to them than the Cam Newton experiment in New England.
Yeah, I'm in agreement here. Although it didn't feel comfortable agreeing with you on this one. I mean,
when does it feel comfortable, Brad? When have you ever felt comfortable?
Well, I mean, I think the Pats are at the end of the line. I think the Cards are one of the better young teams in the league. I think Kyler Murray, as you said, has some special things that he can do, but I don't think he's a great quarterback at this point. But simply, you can't deny that his ability to take off and run is something that's going to, for years and years, haunt a lot of defensive coordinators. And so I just kind of feel in this one like the Cardinals are the better football team going on the road. Yeah, you're going to get 2.5 points. I think the Patriots now have got the 10th or something best record in the AFC. I mean, they're at least a couple games out of a playoff spot. The hesitation I had, and the reason I said I feel uncomfortable about it, is because this is the kind of game where Bill Belichick puts together some sort of game plan that, the younger coach on the other side of the field didn't see coming, So you always have to worry about it. They're not quite dead yet, and it's kind of like this election we got going on. It's not over yet, as much as I think most of the country would like to see it be over with. And until the Pats are put to rest, they're still not dead. But I'm going to take the Cardinals. I'm with you on this one, but it's not something I feel real comfortable about. Yeah,
there's so much to unpack there, and I'm going to not touch any of it on this election. The way I touched the election, my election coverage was the way we covered the Jets a couple weeks ago, when we said the only way the Jets are actually going to win a game this year is after the game is over, they constantly force recounts of the score.
Right.
And then they just got to keep recounting the score until they actually win, and then they'll get their victory. It's really hard to sort of see it. I mean, I hate to see really good franchises and really good dynasties, regardless of the sport, fail or fall off of what they used to do. It's just a sign of the quite frankly, everybody getting older, Brad, and that upsets me. You want these franchises to be great forever. If you're used to them being great forever. That being said, it's time for a change. I think this is going to be a long, very, very long Game of Thrones winter for the New England Patriots for a very long time. It's going to be a long time. I think, I don't know how long Belichick's going to hang in there. But if they rinse and repeat what they did this year, next year, it's going to be all over for this Patriot organization. They don't necessarily draft well. They do a good job on the coaching staff, but when everybody else drafts significantly better than you, and if you don't have Tom Brady, attracting free agents at lesser pay is going to become more and more difficult in the future. There's just a lot of things sort of going against this Patriot organization that were all sort of tied to Tom Brady. Look, if Tom Brady was there, I wouldn't be saying they were going to even go to the Super Bowl this year, but they would be significantly further along than they currently are. I certainly wouldn't be picking the Cardinals, to win this game. All right, Brad. Any last-minute comments about the National Football League before we get out of here?
Well, I think you made a really good point there on free agents going to New England, because that lure is not there anymore.
Yeah.
I don't think people look at New England now, guys getting towards the last 4 or 5 years of their career, and they say, I'm going to take less money to go play with Tom Brady and potentially win a Super Bowl. And I think that's a really solid point. I don't think they have that allure anymore. Cam Newton was the guy they brought in this year. He's a guy that hadn't played football in a couple of years. So it's not like they brought in Drew Brees or, somebody that, was a great quarterback. They brought in a guy that hadn't played in a couple of years and really hadn't played good football for a couple of years before that. So it's unfortunate that the Patriots appear to be on the downslide, but there's a lot of people that are pretty happy about that.
Yeah. I mean, I just think about how much better the Patriots would have been if they had spent some money on Phillip Rivers and brought in Phillip Rivers for the last year of his career. I mean, but, then why not just pay Tom Brady? That's really what it sort of comes down to, is that this organization was cheap and didn't take care of its Hall of Fame quarterback in the way they should have. Brady earned the right to finish his career in New England if he wanted to. They didn't see it that way, so they're sort of getting what they sort of deserve at this point, which, to your point, Brad, makes a lot of people in this country happy.
Yeah, and I think it's important, again, I think we're continually seeing play out something we brought up a few weeks back with how COVID has kind of changed the game this year for people out there that are looking to pick games, and maybe they got some sort of offshore, company that they're working with, that they're placing bets, is wait as long as you can during the course of the week to do this thing, because, we're just seeing so many guys now that it seems to be testing positive or contact tracing, they're traced as to be close to a person that was positive, and it just seems like every week now there's 5 or 6 major players that were waiting until Saturday to find out if they're going to play or not. And if you're out there and you're looking to play a game and it's Monday and you see an opening line of 6.5, and don't be surprised if it's down to 1.5, 4 days later, depending on who's sick. So it's just the way it is. I'm surprised we've really made it this far during the season. We haven't talked about the fact that the Steelers and the Ravens now have been moved to Sunday. They were supposed to play tomorrow night, Thanksgiving. But on that note, I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. Hey, another thing too, we can get more people to give us some notes after the video. Give us your comments. We'll get them on the air next week. How's that?
Yeah. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you think I'm completely off my rocker, or if Brad, if you agree with Brad. Brad, people like to agree with you. People like to not agree with me. That seems to be the trend that I've seen in the comments and messages that we've gotten. You are the sage person in the Gods of Odds realm, if you will.
I wonder if it's the super fan out there that's putting out comments afterwards.
I'm not sure that it's just a super fan. There were several other people commenting on some of this stuff, and I think a lot of people like the over under predictions. So maybe we'll do some more of those next week as well. Yeah, definitely leave your comments. Do check out the big mighty.rip website as well. There's our latest Brad's Baker Dozen, a couple other National Football League and NBA articles on there as well. Coming up next week, we've got another Gods of Odds for you for week number, dare you say the number, it's not lucky to say 13. And so we'll have week 13 next week. Do check out the big merch store. Lots of Gods of Odds merch on there as well as Mighty Rip merch for Mr. Brad Hoiseth in beautiful Southern California. You can tell it's nighttime because it's not sunny. For a beautiful nighttime Southern California's Brad Hoiseth. I'm Dave Dabbah up in Northern California. Wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports week.
God here, and thanks for tuning in to the Gods of Odds. For more semi-witty sports commentary, please make sure you check out mighty.rip. Okay, go ahead and kill the music now.